The work being done by our friends at Canadian Blood Services is always vital, but perhaps never more so than right now during the COVID-19 pandemic we're seeing in Saskatoon and, of course, right around the world. Very happy to be joined by Jennifer Darachuk. Jennifer, thank you for joining us and giving us a bit of a local perspective on what's happening with Canadian Blood Services here in Saskatoon. As a general starting point, do you mind talking about how your business has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So, like many other businesses and organizations, locally here in Saskatoon, we have seen some changes due to COVID-19. Coming to our donor centers looks a bit different now. So, some of the things that have changed is that we have an active wellness checkpoint when you come into our donor centers, asking you, a variety of questions just to ensure that you're feeling well. We also have masks that are mandatory for our donors, staff, and volunteers now that we provide to anyone that comes to our donor centers. So that is a new aspect as well with a blood donation experience. We've also moved to an appointment only system. So we really want people to book appointments in advance. That way it helps us ensure that we can handle physical distancing in our donor centers, which is another change. Just make sure that we're, respecting everybody's space and keeping the environment, the way it needs to be during this pandemic.
And in terms of the levels of donations that you're seeing, what are we seeing there? Have they gone up, kind of stayed the same, gone down? How has the pandemic affected things in that regard?
Yeah, I would say, during the initial, when the pandemic hit, there was a lot of confusion, I'd say, and we did see some drop off with our appointments, in Saskatoon, all across the country. But we put a call out, to the public to say, hey, we're still operating in this pandemic. Blood products are needed in any type of situation, including a pandemic. So we need you to keep coming. And once we put that call out, we really did see a great response, and people, will continue to come. And we just needed to clarify that we still need to operate and to come to support us. And since then, we really have seen donors be flexible and supportive of us, and it's allowed us to continue meeting the expectations. But the one thing that did change is that our ability to collect was lessened during the pandemic. So we weren't able to collect as much because of some of the physical distancing guidelines that we had to put in. In maybe before we used to collect a certain number of units during a certain amount of time. That was reduced because we just couldn't process as many people. So that's where what's changed, and now we're still working through that capacity. And so we're expanding our capacity all across the country to make sure that we can meet the rising of patients, because blood demand is now on the rise in the last few weeks.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. You have seen a rise in demand, and do you think that's specifically directly related to the pandemic situation?
Yeah, so we would say it's really in relation to the fact that our hospitals, our surgeries are starting to go back to their regular capacity, whereas some of those routine procedures were put on hold during the pandemic as other preparations were happening in those facilities. So now they're going back to their regular operations, and we're seeing the demand for blood kind of rise back to those same levels that we would have seen before the pandemic. We saw a bit of a decrease during the pandemic. So.
So for those who might not have gotten that message, that you're still looking for donations and donors to come in and give generously, what's the best procedure for someone to follow if they see this and think, well, I'd like to donate my blood?
Yeah, the best thing to do is to go to our website, www.blood.ca. So if you go there, you'll find a bunch of information. If you've never donated before, there's an eligibility quiz that will, go through some basic eligibility questions that a lot of people ask if they've never donated before. So they can go through that information, If people still have questions after that, they can call and speak to one of our customer service representatives at 1-888-2-DONATE to answer any other questions that they have. And really from there, we encourage people book your appointment. So you can book, one of three ways. You can book online, as I mentioned at blood.ca. You can download our app, the Give Blood app, which is a great way to manage your appointments. And then also you can call our toll-free number and book through phone if that's your preferred method. And we really do need people to book in these upcoming months. We've actually added hours at a number of our locations all across the country, including here in Saskatoon. So starting in July, we have 6 more hours every single week where we're asking people to fill those additional hours. So there are more appointments available in Saskatoon, and we need people to rise to the challenge and really fill them for us.
Absolutely, a great way you can help out during the pandemic. Doesn't cost you a cent and can really
Mhm.
make a huge difference in someone's life. And just before we got rolling, I asked you the most important question of all, and the answer is a good one. You too still get the cookies at the end of the donation.
Yes, you still get the cookies at the end of the donation and your juice box, and you can leave knowing that you have directly helped somebody in our community and that they are so appreciative of that.
Jennifer, that's great. Thank you so much for chatting with us today and for all the great work that you folks do at Canadian Blood Services.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to talk.